Picture this. You're in an argument with someone you love. You're not guessing, you're not speculating. You can see it like a screenshot in your mind. You remember exactly what they said, how they said it, the look on their face. And you're thinking, how can you deny it? I was there.
And then they hit you with the most infuriating line on earth. That's not what happened.
So now it's not even about the original issue. Now it's about reality. Who's lying? Who's rewriting history?
Or the scarier option, what if nobody's lying? What if you both honestly remember two different versions of the same moment?
Today we're talking about false memories. Not the obvious stuff like forgetting where you put your keys. I mean memories you feel in your bones. The ones you'd swear in court are true. And yet, they're partly wrong, or totally invented, or stitched together from pieces of other experiences.
And we're going to get into three things. How false memories form in the first place, how they can quietly sabotage relationships, and why your brain isn't a recorder. It's more like an editor with a messy timeline and a strong opinion.
Let's start with the biggest myth, that memory works like playback. Something happens, it's stored, and later you retrieve it unchanged.
That's how it feels, right? Like you open a file. But memory is closer to rebuilding a scene from clues. Every time you remember, you're reconstructing.
Which means your memory can be influenced by what you learned after the event, by your mood today, by how many times you've told the story, and by what other people said happened.
Here's a simple example. Someone asks, "Do you remember the car accident?" That's already a loaded question. If they say, "Do you remember the smash?" your brain tends to imagine more intensity. You might later remember broken glass that wasn't there.
It's wild, but it makes sense when you think of the brain's priorities. The brain isn't trying to archive your life. It's trying to help you survive and make decisions.
Exactly. It stores meaning more than detail. Who was safe? What was dangerous? Was I embarrassed? Was I loved? Those emotional tags matter. The details are optional.
And then there's the problem of gaps. Memory has holes. Your brain hates holes. So it fills them.
And it fills them with whatever is most available. Expectations, stereotypes, repeated stories, even scenes from other times that feel similar.
Which is why two siblings can grow up in the same house and tell completely different stories about what it was like.
They're not necessarily trying to be difficult. They just encoded different things. One remembers attention. The other remembers the routines that felt normal. And later, those versions get polished into a narrative.
Let's talk about that polishing process, because it's sneaky. The more you tell a story, the more stable it feels.
But stable doesn't mean accurate. Rehearsal can actually lock in the wrong parts, especially if you got confirmation from someone, even casually. Like, "Yeah, I remember that too."
Or the opposite. Someone disagrees, and you double down. Because now your memory isn't just a memory, it's part of your identity. It's proof you were wronged, or proof you were right, or proof you're not crazy.
And when memory becomes identity, it becomes very hard to revise.
Okay, so how do false memories actually form? Give us the mechanics.
Mechanics-wise, there are a few common pathways. One is suggestion. Someone plans an idea, intentionally or not, and it gets woven into your recall. Another is imagination. The more you picture something, the more familiar it feels, and your brain can mislabel familiarity as truth.
So if you've replayed a conversation in your head 100 times, your brain starts treating your replay like evidence.
Yes. Another pathway is emotion. Strong feelings can make memories feel vivid. People assume vivid equals accurate, but emotion just turns up the volume. It doesn't guarantee the lyrics are correct.
That's such a good way to put it.
And there's stress. Under stress, attention narrows. You might remember the tone of threat, but not the exact words. Later, your brain supplies words that match the threat.
So the brain is basically doing adaptive storytelling. It's not lying to you. It's trying to make a coherent world.
Right. It's doing its job, just not the job we want it to do in an argument.
Which brings us to relationships. Because false memories don't just make you wrong about trivia. They can break trust.
This is where it gets painful. Imagine a couple fighting about something that happened a year ago. One person remembers an apology that never came. The other remembers apologizing repeatedly. Both feel dismissed. Both feel unseen.
And when you feel unseen, you start collecting evidence. You start building a case. Every new disagreement becomes a pattern.
And that pattern might be partly built from memory distortions. Not because you're malicious, but because your brain is trying to protect you from uncertainty.
So instead of, I'm not sure, we say, I know exactly what happened.
Because I'm not sure feels vulnerable. It feels like losing, especially if you've been hurt before.
Let's name a common relationship trap, arguing about the tape.
Yes, people act like there's a tape we could rewind, but there isn't. There are two reconstructions.
And if you treat your reconstruction as the only reality, the other person becomes either stupid or evil.
Which escalates fast, because now the fight isn't that comment hurt me. It's, you're a person who lies and rewrites history.
And to be fair, sometimes people do gaslight. Sometimes someone really is manipulating your sense of reality.
Absolutely. We need to say that clearly. The existence of false memories doesn't mean you should dismiss every concern or excuse bad behavior.
But it does mean that not every disagreement about the past is proof of manipulation. Sometimes it's just two brains doing normal brain stuff.
And the healthiest relationships make room for that. They make room for, this is how I remember it, instead of, this is what happened.
Let's dig into why the brain edits the past like a bad film director. Why not store the clean footage?
Because clean footage is expensive. A brain that stored everything in perfect detail would be overwhelmed. It's like trying to keep every frame from every camera in the city forever.
So we compress.
We compress, we summarize, we prioritize, and we update. One of the strangest parts is that when you recall a memory, it becomes flexible for a moment, then it gets stored again.
So remembering is also rewriting.
Exactly. Each retrieval can add new context, like your current beliefs, your current relationship status, your current interpretation of someone's intentions.
Which means if you're angry at someone now, you may remember their past actions as more hostile than you did at the time.
And if you're in love, you might smooth over details that don't match the romance.
Okay, let's make it practical. If I'm listening and thinking, wait, are my memories unreliable? What do I do with that without spiraling?
First, don't panic. Unreliable doesn't mean useless. Memory is often good at the big picture, but treat detail with humility, especially when the stakes are high.
Humility is the key word. What else?
Second, separate impact from intent. Even if you disagree on what was said word for word, you can still address what it felt like. I felt dismissed is hard to argue within, you said this exact sentence.
That can instantly change the tone of a fight. Because you're not forcing the other person to confess to your version of history to validate your emotions.
Third, watch out for story inflation. The more you replay something, the more solid it feels. If you notice yourself rehearsing a grievance, ask, am I remembering or am I building a script?
And if it's the second one, it might be time to write it down and then step away. Or talk it through with someone who will challenge you gently.
Fourth, use external anchors when it makes sense. Messages, calendars, photos, not to become a detective in your own relationship, but to ground big decisions.
Right. If you're deciding whether something is a recurring behavior pattern, real data can help. But if you're using screenshots as a weapon, you're already in trouble.
Fifth, learn your personal distortion style. Some people remember themselves as more reasonable than they were. Some people remember themselves as more guilty than they should. Some people remember rejection more vividly than acceptance.
That one hits. If you're wired to expect rejection, you'll find it in past scenes, even when it wasn't there.
And then your life becomes consistent with your fear. That's the heartbreaking loop.
Let's touch the most uncomfortable possibility. Sometimes a false memory can come from something you were told repeatedly.
Family stories are powerful. If you've heard, you always hated school since you were little, you may end up remembering school as miserable even if you had plenty of good days.
Because the story becomes your biography.
And biographies are edited. They have themes. They leave things out.
So here's a question for listeners. What's one story you tell about your past that you've never questioned?
And if you question it, what else becomes possible? Not in a nothing is real way, more in a maybe I'm not trapped by that narrative way.
Let's end with the relationship piece again, because that's where this lands. If two people remember differently, what's the move?
The move is curiosity over prosecution. Help me understand how you remember it, not as a trap, as an actual invitation.
And maybe saying out loud, my memory feels certain, but I know memory can be weird. That sentence alone can lower defenses.
Because it communicates respect. It says, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm saying we're human.
And if trust is the goal, that's better than winning the tape argument.
Plus, when you stop treating memory like a courtroom, you can focus on the real question. What do we need now? An apology? A boundary? A change? A repair?
So yes, your brain edits your past. Sometimes like a bad film director. But it's also trying to protect you, make meaning, and keep your story coherent.
The trick is remembering that coherence is not the same thing as accuracy.
And the next time you catch yourself thinking, I know exactly what happened, maybe try adding one quiet sentence, as far as I remember.
Not to weaken your point. To strengthen your relationship with reality and with the people you care about.
That's it for today. If this episode made you think of a moment you've been arguing about for years, maybe don't rush to prove your version. Try understanding why it feels so certain.
And if you want to keep exploring this, pay attention this week to how often you retell the same memory. Notice what stays. Notice what changes. That's your brain editing in real time.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.